Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hey everybody, Kieran aka The Laird here. I'm back with another book review, and this one is a follow-up to a previous video that I did. And those of you who watch my channel will remember me covering Classic Gaming Volume 1 by Future Publishing. And those of you who watched that will also remember that I was quite critical of that magazine, mainly because the contents were a little bit lazy in terms of they chose very popular games. There was very brief write-ups, heavy use of images. It was all very obvious is probably the best way to put it. And also the selection of systems that they chose for the first one seemed quite strange in that it didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, like they didn't follow a timeline or anything like that. And I was quite baffled because it didn't seem to make sense to me why they chose those systems basically. And now that does make a little bit more sense because in volume 2 they've got a different set of systems, so I can only assume that it was always the intention to do this as a series and do different systems in each magazine. And I was quite pleased with actually the selection that they've offered up in this, which I'll go into it in a moment. But first of all, let's have a look at that cover. It looks great again. I loved the cover on the last one with all the iconic Sprite artwork. And this one is similar. I mean, you've got loads of recognisable stuff on there. You know, you've got Gauntlet here. You've got Zool. There's California Games. There's Fatal Fury. There's Samurai Showdown, Street Fighter 2. We've got Star Fox. We've got Zelda. We've got Metroid. We've got California Games, Frontier Elite 2. Impossible Mission, Mayhem in Monsterland. So there's absolutely loads of stuff on there that's instantly recognisable. Oh yeah, the little guy from Nebulous. I'll point him out as well. And I think that's great. And so let's have a look into the magazine. It took me a while to find a place where I could get good light, and that's the problem with this time of year. But straight away, I like the fact they've used an Atari logo there. Bonus points for that straight away. So here we go, the content. So in this one, they've chosen the Commodore 64, they've chosen the Atari ST, they've chosen the Super Nintendo, the Neo Geo, and the Dreamcast. So I think the last one had N64 and PlayStation. I remember saying it was a bit strange that they've chosen two from the same generation. Well, here they've kind of chosen three from the same generation because we've got one 8-bit, three 16-bits, and then it jumps to the Dreamcast. So it doesn't really follow any rhyme or reason, but we can see now they're building it up, and obviously they're focusing on the most popular systems. And the last one had the Amiga, so it's great to see that in this one they put the Atari ST, because I've said so many times the Atari ST gets ignored far too much by the general gaming press. The only mentions you ever seem to be is like, oh, it wasn't as good as the Amiga, you know, the Atari ST was crap, it got beaten by the Amiga, blah blah blah. You know, it's always the poor Atari ST kind of thing. And it's a shame because the Atari ST sold extremely well. It was the leading computer in the UK and Europe for several years in terms of sales, and the leading platform for software producers as well. They develop on the ST first and then port. And a lot of people seem to forget that, and its impact on the industry being the first 16-bit computer as well. It kind of kick-started that whole 16-bit generation. So here we go, Commodore 64, obviously officially the most popular computer of all time. So we've got a nice history on that. And obviously Future published a lot of magazines themselves back in the old days, so they've given a little plug to their old Commodore format there by Future. And nice blown up screenshot there, very reminiscent of what Retro Gamer do. I think I, on the last one, accused Future of trying to copy Retro Gamers somewhat with what they did, and of course now that doesn't matter whatsoever because Imagine Publishing are now part of Future. The takeover was approved recently and it's all gone through and that. So now that part of things doesn't really matter anymore. They can copy copy Future's style as much as they like. Even use the same designs if they wish. So a good start. Last Ninja, gone into IK Plus. Another classic. Whizball, the Sentinel. So I think they've been a little bit less obvious with their picks, because obviously the Sentinel isn't one you'd expect to see in here. Most of the others there, granted, Monty on the Run, another, I suppose, quite obvious choice for the Commodore 64. But then a lot of people seem to also mention Auf Wiedersehen, Monty, but Pirates there, see another kind of less obvious title, I think. Possible Mission. Bubble Bobble. And a little thing on Craft Gold, which obviously they did some of the best C64 games. Armalite. Postman Pat. And it's really, really funny to see Postman Pat in here, because I recently did a review of the Spectrum version of Postman Pat for Hey Poor Player, because I have such good memories of playing the game with my brother when I was a kid. So it was really funny to see that in there, and I know my brother will be really pleased to see that in there as well. What I'll actually do is I will link my review to Postman Pat above here as well, so you can see it, because I have to do that. Mayhem in Monsterland. Good one to finish that off, that section, I should say, because obviously that was probably the game that pushed the Commodore 64 more than any other game, and it was a very late release, coming out in 1993. You know, and to put that into context, 1993 was the same year that the Atari Jaguar came out. So, you know, it's Commodore 64K to 64-bit. You know, that in the same year. Quite funny, really. So here we go. The Atari ST. Now, I was super pleased to see the ST in here, and they've done quite a nice job of this, and they've mentioned that it was a big influence, and mentioned that, you know, it was a very good battle between the two. So they've been much fairer on the system here, and although they don't go massively into the history, they do touch on it, and how the ST came about. Obviously, the Amiga was originally going to become an Atari machine, and they go into that a little bit. So they got the history mostly right as well, which is good to see. Interesting thing here is that the joypad they've shown there is the Valken. That was done for the Valken. It could be used with the STE as well, but it was primarily done for the Valken. But it does fit in nicely with the colours of the ST, so it's kind of cool to see it in there still. ST format, of course, which was by far the best ST magazine. It was a really, really good mag, and always had great cover discs. So lovely to see that there. So it started off the ST section. What else? Dungeon Master. You know, the game that sold the ST. It supposedly, you know, something like 3/4 of the people who bought STs bought Dungeon Master or something in the 80s, something like that. I do remember some mad figure like that. So it was the game that really pushed the ST to the forefront as a gaming machine, rather than the business machine that Atari were originally trying to sell it as. So you cannot underestimate the importance of Dungeon Master and all the games it influenced afterwards. I mean, there's still Dungeon Master-like games coming out to this day. So California Games, good to see the ST version there. Not an obvious choice. Carrier Command, a great example of the ST doing 3D, which is something it did better than the Amiga because of the faster processor. The Amiga's custom chips had no advantage when it came to doing 3D. So the ST's faster processor and the fact that it used less resources to draw the screen helped it along and gave 3D games the extra oomph on the ST. Oids there as well. Frontier Elite 2. Another game which really showed what the ST could do, hardware-wise. Midwinter. A game you don't always hear talked about, but a bit of an underrated classic. Another game that really showed what the ST could do, actually. They've chosen these games well. Silkwell wasn't a game I'd expect to see. You often hear it talked about with the Amiga, but less so with the ST. but it's a very solid shoot 'em up. Now, Gauntlet 2 probably deserves to be there more than anything. I think that's the best arcade conversion on the ST, and they nailed it. I mean, it's pretty much arcade perfect, especially if you've got the 4-player adapter that plugs into the ST printer port. I had a lot of fun with that when I was a kid. A nice little bit on Gremlin graphics. I would have expected them. I probably would have expected them to do the Bitmap Brothers if I was going to guess, or one of the French companies like Infogrames or something, or Ubisoft. But yeah, Gremlin's good to see because they did do some good stuff on the ST. Laser Squad. Again, a very less obvious choice because it's more known as a Spectrum game than the 16-bit game. So good to see Julian Gollop's game there. And Stunt Car Racer. Again, another game that shows the ST being amazingly capable when it comes to 3D. And I think I'll link it again here actually in this part. But the ST, I did an ST linked up to an Amiga Revival earlier this year, which got a lot of people coming over and looking and playing, and everyone was pretty amazed by it. And it was clear to see that the ST had the superiority when it came to Stunt Car Racer. The ST version was clearly faster, and when linked up, actually, the ST had to slow down to match the speed of the Amiga, which is quite funny. Cute and nebulous there. Graphically impressive game. Again, it's not a game you'd first sort of think of when it comes to the ST. I think more people seem to know it as a Commodore 64 game. Although it came out on just about everything under many different names. Obviously, Tower Topper, Castellian, etc. So then we go from the 16-bit Atari ST into the 16-bit Super Nintendo. So again, looking at one of their classic Mags Superplay. Starting off with Zelda. I mean, obviously they're going through some pretty obvious Nintendo franchises here. I think the SNES choices here are probably more obvious than with the other systems. Super Mario World, again, pretty obvious choices here. Super Metroid, F-Zero, Starwing, we've got nothing out of the ordinary here really so far at all. Super Mario Kart, you could almost predict these as they come up. Donkey Kong Country, Street Fighter 2, yeah, they've done a focus on Square, again, a fairly obvious one with all the RPGs on the SNES. Super Castlevania and Super Probotector, aka Super Contra, or Contra 3, should I say, sorry. Axelay, probably the best shooter on the SNES. The SNES isn't as well versed in shoot 'em ups as the Mega Drive is, but Axelay is definitely one of the best ones. So there you go. That was the SNES. I mean, you can see you could have probably guessed every single one of those choices that was there. The Neo Geo, AES. My brother actually has the Neo Geo CD there. It's a great machine, especially since it plays burned discs. I probably shouldn't say that, but I do like the Neo Geo, but they are extortionately expensive to buy and collect for these days, which leaves them probably as out of reach as they were back in the day, to be honest. Samurai Showdown 2. Of course, the Neo Geo has a heavy focus on one-on-one fighters. It's what it's known for. Metal Slug X, which I think was the last Metal Slug game released on the Neo Geo, but a bloody fine game. Last Blade, which is one of the later one-on-one fighters you don't often hear talked about, but again, a very good game. Excellent Blazing Star. So they've actually been less obvious with the choices here for the Neo Geo. King of the Fighters series. Fatal Fury Special. I always love the Fatal Fury games. Much preferred them to the Street Fighter games. Special is a good one. I've got Fatal Fury Special on the Saturn, which is a great port. Gary Mark of the Wolves, of course, which many people quote as being the best Neo Geo fighting game. SNK vs Capcom. And this is great. I really, really, really loved that they put this in. I think this was excellent, having a focus on a homebrew publisher, NG Dev Team, who have done some great homebrew for the Neo Geo and for the for the Dreamcast. In many ways, it's probably almost wrong to call them homebrew, because their games are so utterly professional. They sell them in original boxes, carts. Their games could not be more professional. You know, they would not look out of place in an arcade. You know, and look at these games. I mean, that's the one that everyone's looking forward to now. It's their next game, Krautbuster, which is clearly inspired by the Metal Slug games. But the stuff they've done so far, like Gunlord and Neo XYZ and Last Hope, I mean, brilliant games. Windjammers, one of the best two-player sports games ever, without doubt. Such good fun. Basically an update on Pong. Absolutely cracking game. Shock Troopers is another one I don't think gets talked about enough. I think it's an absolutely superb take on Mercs. Last Resort, cult classic. Yep, it's probably one of the Neo shoot 'em ups you hear talked about the most. And into the Dreamcast. So excellent look at the Dreamcast here. And that was their Dreamcast mag. They had the DC UK. Sonic Adventure. You have to, when you talk about Sega, you probably have to start off with Sonic. And Sonic Adventure, a lot of people still say was the only good 3D Sonic, and they went downhill after that. Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur was the first Dreamcast game I ever played, and I remember seeing it and being utterly blown away by the graphics. I just could not believe how good they were. And it still looks pretty amazing to this day, to be fair. Jet Set Radio, Power Stone 2. Shenmue, of course. Like the fact they talked about it starting on the Saturn down there. Resident Evil Code Veronica. Phantasy Star Online, which I believe you can still play online, because I think there's still servers that you can use to play that. Crazy Taxi, which is my favourite Dreamcast game. I absolutely loved it in the arcades. The Dreamcast port is pretty much perfect. It is just one of the greatest reasons to own a Dreamcast. And that's come out in other things since, but the Dreamcast version has got all the original music and advertising and that stuff. Focus on Capcom, who did some cracking stuff on the Dreamcast. Metropolis Street Racer. Typing of the Dead, great to see that. It's a bit of a cult classic, that. It's hilarious. It's amazing that it even works, really. Rez, of course, cult classic, which has now just been revived for PlayStation VR. I haven't played it, but I've heard amazing things about it. And that's pretty much it. And they've done a nice SNK splash there. So, and on the back, it's got a kind of synopsis of what's inside, which is good to see. And yeah, all in all, that is a really fine Bookazine. It's so much better than the first one. I think I wasn't the only one who criticised the first one. I saw some other reviews that people did, and they all seem to come to quite similar conclusions to me. And it seems straight away with this second volume, they've learned a lot more from the way Future do Bookazines. And it is so much better, less obvious choice of games, better written, better designed. Everything about it's just better. And I personally think it's a really good Bookazine and well worth picking up. So thanks for watching. Give us a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll be back with another video very soon. And I suggest you all go pick up Classic Gaming Volume 2 right now. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.